What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Slide Bite. And this one has been asked for a while now, and I'm finally getting around to do it. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the WeTech P90. This is probably one of the more unique guns that we're going to be reviewing here on the channel. And there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on inside this gun that I'm surprised WeTech actually went through and did. But when I think about it more and more, I can see why they did it. Now, before we begin, like always, if you guys need any support whatsoever, the Heavy Recoil Club is there for you. They are basically more of me, just a little less autistic. And they got all sorts of wonderful channels for you guys to peek around in, ask for help, and then subsequently get called trash afterwards. Also, I have personal places where you can hang out and say hi and call me trash. My Discord, Instaho, and a couple other places besides that. Right, plugs out of the way. Let's go ahead and just quickly talk about this PDW. SMG? I don't know. I've been looking for this mainly because one of my friends has been requesting me to do this particular SMG for a while now. And I got this off of Hop Up. Guy said it was brand new. I sort of believe him. So this is a used gun. It has been broken in somewhat, not by me. So take what I say with a bit of with a kernel of salt, essentially. Now this, yes, of course, is made by WeTech, and WeTech is known for their gas blowbacks. Mainly their weird stuff, at least on the Heavy Recoil Club. When people think WeTech, they usually think the M14, they think G3s, their MSK, their Taiwanese rifles, and even this, which we're gonna go over. So like always, we're gonna go ahead and take this apart, show you the things that make it tick, the trades for the collectors, and there's a lot to go over on this particular SMG. Stuff that doesn't make sense when you take it apart, but when you start to think about it, it makes a little more sense. So out of the way, let's take it to the table. Rightio, so welcome back to the table, and we have our P90 out in front of us, and let's go ahead and just quickly go over trades because there's not that many to start with. So first off, on the left side of the gun, we have 3 trades that are, well, relatively important for those who collect. For one, we have a serial number on the carry handle or optic mount. It's just a mock-up of whatever it would be. We also have the FN Herstal Belgium on the side here in this little, I guess, cutout. And we also have the FN logo, obviously saying licensed by FN Herstal. This is licensed by Cybergun, made by WeTech as the OEM. And I guess WeTech did an alright job in terms of the overall finish. It's definitely feels relatively solid. On the right side of the gun, it's relatively sparse. We do have a FN logo here, and that's pretty much it. Control-wise, the gun is relatively simple. We have a dial style of safety. We have our charging handle, which is mimicked on both sides of the gun. And we also have our magazine release, which is probably the more iconic part of this gun. The P90 is a bullpup, as it is in real life. So as such, we can reload it by pulling back on this, and we'll go for the magazines first. So the more iconic part of the gun is, of course, its magazines. And WeTech did a relatively good job at mimicking the actual thing. It is got a ammo marker count, which is not visible because this side of the gun is the gas reservoir, or sorry, magazine. And on the other side is where the BBs are fed. Looking at the head of the magazine here, you can see that this is a little, I guess, feeder lip. So when the gun is, or when the magazine is loaded, there's a little metal slot that I will show that lifts this and allows BBs to feed in. The gun, I guess, in a way, has a AUG feeding system. And the way that it works is kind of cool. And as you can see here, that is not your traditional feed lip or feed valve into the gun. And when we take this apart, I'm going to show you the kind of ingenious system that WeTech came up with in order for this gun to work. Aside from that, the gun's magazine is all polymer, or at least the shell is. It is kind of fragile. I did drop this, and as such it did kind of crack there, so that's on me. But I have heard that these guns are pretty modular to fix, and the same I guess goes with WeTech. That said, the mags are kind of leaky, so that's just something that WeTech has yet to, I guess, deal with. Right, so that's enough yammering about the magazine. Let's go ahead and take this gun apart. So to start, we just simply need to push on this button here, and if we do, push it right, so come on. If I pull it out carefully, it takes everything out, so at least everything that matters. So if I pull this off, this is your bolt carrier group, and as you can see, that is your nozzle, and right there you can see is your bolt, and it rides on the pair of guide rods with the recoil springs there. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It is very smooth. I just oiled this, so it rides exceptionally smooth on these guide rails, and yeah, it's kind of neat. Moving on to the front assembly, we do have our charging handle here, which is got its recoil, or its return spring wrapped around the barrel. And again, this is a bullpup, so the barrel is feeding roughly around here behind the trigger. It does allow this gun to be relatively compact, but as we go over in handling, it is kind of chunky. So, further disassembling the gun, we can go ahead and pull off the end cap. It is held in by that little peg there, which is on the bolt carrier group here. So long as the bolt carrier group is in here, you cannot pull the end cap off. So, and from here, we can go ahead and take out the fire control group, which is something that's kind of neat about this gun. So you simply lift up on this tab, and you can pull the entire thing out. I apologize for the fire control group looking the way it is. Again, this is a used gun, so from here, this is your trigger. So if I was to push on this, and I push on the disconnector, come on, that releases your hammer. And the interesting thing about the P90 is that this is a progressive trigger. So if I move it like roughly here, it should be, that's about full auto, roughly. So the lovely thing about the P90 is that it's very modular. So as a result, you can essentially get, if you wanted, you can get two of these, have one as a backup. So if, let's say, this fire control group goes kaput, you can always take it apart, put in a new one, and keep running it. Does make this very easy to, I guess, fix to a certain extent. Moving on to the receiver, there is actually a reason why I didn't go over, I guess, the magazine as in depth. Well, that's because WeTech did a crazy little system here where the gun has an internal gas magazine reservoir. So what do I mean by that? Well, you can see that there are two nozzles there. This mates with that little hole right there. So when the gun is essentially one piece, essentially this feeds gas into the internal reservoir in this gun. And essentially your bolt will be lined up with this when you pull the trigger, meaning that it feeds the valve feeds gas toward the BB and backwards, allowing for it to be a gas blowback. It's a very cool, I guess, I wouldn't say ingenious. It is a little overcomplicated for certain aspects, but it does work, and it's a very cool system. And aside from that, you do have a trigger bar there, as such. And yeah, I'm not going to take apart this gun any further because anything else requires detail stripping. Right, so that is your P90 field stripped and I guess gone over in the table. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together off camera, and I'll see you guys back in performance and handling. Right, so now that we're back from the table, let's go ahead and talk about the performance of the gun. So starting with FPS, this gun chronos at roughly 340 to 350 FPS with 0.28s and a 68 degree Fahrenheit weather, so take that what you will. The gun does shoot relatively hot with relatively heavy BBs, which was kind of surprising. I'm pretty sure with .20s that joule creep is going to be even higher. So that's just something to be aware of. This gun may not, while it looks CQB, may not actually be CQB. Accuracy-wise is average with a roughly 2-foot group at 50 feet, which is completely average. It's not going to blow everyone away, but you can pull miracles occasionally at that range. You cannot be a DMR with this. This gun is definitely not built for that. It's very shoddy because WeTech. If you were to improve anything on performance-wise, I would say new hop and a tight bore barrel. Kind of the standard stuff when it comes to improving a gun performance-wise. Aftermarket-wise, there's not much that you can get for this. You can maybe get an NPAS, but I'm not sure if it's going to work very well. Going over other parts of the gun, the magazine is all right. The frames of these are kind of fragile, so as a result, you can't exactly just be dropping these on the floor. You do have to be very careful with these. And also with WeTech, a lot of the mags have the leaky thing going with them. That seems to be a running trait with WeTech, is that while they make a lot of cool guns, the mags tend to leak a lot. So as a result, I'd recommend tightening down everything or essentially oiling O-rings, essentially just to give them a tighter finish. Rate of fire on this is surprisingly high. I don't know the exact RPS on this, but I do know that it is relatively high on it. You're gonna go through all 50 rounds relatively quickly. The gun is relatively efficient. You are able to get roughly 1.5 to 2 reloads per charge. And the gun takes a lot of green gas, like basically a fifth of your can if you're not careful. It is a very hungry gun, and because of the internal magazine on this, you can theoretically dry fire this without the mag in it. But right now my gun is kind of leaky, so it's due for overhaul. And you just simply push down on this tab right here and you can dry fire the gun. So we're performance out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about handling of the gun. So there's a lot of good things. Let's start with those first. The gun is very comfortable to hold. It's a very ergonomic gun despite its weird looks. The foregrip and the trigger, very comfortable. This kind of rifle style of like traditional shotgun handle, while it's kind of weird, it does feel organic. It's very comfortable to hold. You can see that I've been shouldering this gun a lot, and that's because despite its chunky look, it is very comfortable to shoulder, keep in the shoulder, and essentially keep at rest like what I'm doing. Even low ready, and it's just very comfortable to essentially have in the shoulder, ready to go. Aiming down, iron sights, yeah, they're meh. I would get a low profile scope that you can put onto here. That way there's no like chin rest. The stock is relatively comfortable and it's not that heavy. It's a very light-ish PDW. It's not as light as, let's say, the PP2K or the MP7s, but it's in that sweet spot where you can definitely run this for a while not getting tired. Say if you were to lug a SCAR or 416, 417, that sort of stuff. Now I've went over all of the good stuff. Let's go ahead and start with the bad stuff. So let's go ahead and ghost the trigger because that's one of the bad parts. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to semi-auto. I'm going to go ahead and put on some pressure. It's kind of mushy, a little bit of take up. There's a light wall. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and try that again. So let's go ahead and ghost that trigger. A little bit of take up. Huh. So there wasn't a defined wall. It just, you kept going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and then it clicks. So let's go ahead and reset that. Slowly loosen up. And there it was. And then there's a bit of creep afterwards. So in semi-auto, the trigger is very mushy, and that's kind of to be expected. That long trigger bar does mean that there's a bit of a kind of lag. And also, this is not the most tight-fitted gun. So let's go ahead and move this to full auto, shall we? Oh, and one thing is the gun is a progressive trigger, so this is going to be kind of weird. So in full auto, I'm going to keep going. There's the that was not the full auto. That was semi-auto. So if I keep going, ooh, that's not nice. So it's currently in full auto, and oh man, that is not pleasant. So there's a defined wall. So let's go and do that again. So let's go ahead and do that again. That's semi-auto. And if I was to reset, you can hear it click. Go again. That's semi-auto. And if I was to go all the way, that's full auto. And it is a very heavy trigger. I'd say like 20 pounds, if that's possible. It's not comfortable whatsoever. Pulling on that trigger, it is very heavy, very spongy. And again, that's kind of down to this being a bullpup and the trigger pack being right here, and essentially the trigger bar going like so. Not the most comfortable triggers in the world, but they work. It's just not comfortable. I've been kind of spoiled by other trigger groups. So my Scar, it's got a pretty nice trigger. My MP7's got a nice trigger. Most of my guns have pretty nice triggers, so this is definitely probably one of the worst. But it works relatively, so it's not the end of the world. The other main downside is reloading the P90. So as you guys have seen, I actually haven't had the magazine in the gun for majority of this review, and there's a pretty good reason as to why. The components inside the magazine well here they're just not that durable. The main persistent issue with P90s is the little inlet valve right here, which I'll show as a magnified image. When you reload these guns, you have to be very gentle with them. You cannot just essentially do that, because you are going to damage the valve inside that P90 like I just did right there. So I'm going to essentially take a picture and show you guys on screen what I just did. That little brass valve is not supposed to be hammered down so hard, because if you hit it hard enough, it is going to stay flat. Now, because WeTech's P90s have an internal gas valve or gas magazine, that little brass valve is essentially a one-way valve or two-way valve, which feeds gas in from the P90's magazine to the internal magazine. So it allows you to dry fire the gun when there's no magazine in it. It's great for maintenance purposes, but in actual game skirmishes where you're going to be trying to slam it in as fast as you can to get it running again, you can risk flattening that, and in order to essentially bring it back up, for me, I have to take a little screw and essentially angle it and pull it out. Well, it didn't even work that time. Come on. Well, it's broken. So yeah. Not the best design system, because it is one of those parts of the gun that is going to get a lot of wear. So as such, when you reload these guns, you cannot just manhandle it in. You do have to kind of be very gentle with it, like so, because if not, you are going to essentially pull this off during a reload, and you're going to hear a loud hiss, and all your gas is gone, and you basically have you're going to hear that often, and it may give your position away or some other things like that. So as a result, it does take away from its skirmish ability. It can still work if you're a lot more cool-headed, but if you're new to the game and you're panicking, you're hiding behind a wall, someone's got a Mark 46 and is basically dumping fire at you, and you're basically trying to slam this in, you're more than likely going to break that portion of the gun, and you're going to spend quite a bit of time trying to fix it. There is a couple of workarounds for it. For one is to basically put in a stiffer spring. I have sort of done it, but you can only do so much because that spring is tiny, and as a result, you are going to flatten it quite a bit. In the end, am I going to recommend this gun to everyone? It saddens me to say, but no. There's a couple reasons why. For one, the gun's kind of finicky in that way. Because of the way they engineer that internal gas magazine and the way that it taps gas from the magazine, it does lead it prone to failing quite often, more often than not. Two, it's all right. There's part support is kind of limited on this, especially for aftermarket. If you were to upgrade this, the most you can do is upgrade the barrel, hopping, that's about it. While it's cool that you can remove the trigger pack separately and let's say swap it out for something else, there's not much in the terms of aftermarket that I found that allows you to have better triggers. And again, the trigger is kind of mushy, so it's just not the best in the world. So if I was to recommend this, it would be basically people like me who like to collect weird things, and or maybe someone who's fallen in love with a P90 like a certain anime girl. And in the end, I just can't recommend it to anyone except for collectors. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this video. Thanks for stopping by. If you like what you saw, like, comment. I wouldn't really say subscribe. It seems like YouTube's going downhill nowadays. Thank you to my patrons on the screen. You guys are awesome. And if you guys want to hit me up on socials, I got my Instaho, Discord, Heavy Recoil Club like always. And with out of the way, take care.